Hari Om everyone. Welcome to the eighth class on Kathopnishad. We have covered seven classes so far, and we are into the second chapter or second Valli, you can say. So let's start with the Shanti part, and I'll chant at my end. You can chant on yours. ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ गणानां त्वा गणपतिगं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आन शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् ॐ श्रीमहागणपतये नमः सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः Okay, so we are starting on this class on Kathopnishad. I'll just share it on screen. So we are into this Pratham Adhyaya Dvitiya Valli, the first chapter, part 2. So in all, we have two chapters with three parts each. So that is six chapters, you can say, or six sub-chapters. So the chapters become smaller as we go on. The first one, because it's more descriptive about the story and all. So it's about 30 verses. This one is about 25, and the others will be around 17 and maybe up to 15 also, 15 to 17 verses mostly. So this is the seventh verse which we did in the last class. I'll just add something more here, and then we can move on to the next one. श्रवणायापि बहुभिर्न लभ्यः शृण्वन्तोऽपि बहवोऽयं न विद्युः आश्चर्यवक्ता कुशलोऽस्य लब्धा आश्चर्यज्ञाता कुशलानुशिष्टः श्रवणायापि बहुभिर्यो न लभ्यः शृण्वन्तोऽपि बहवोऽयं न विद्युः आश्चर्यवक्ता कुशलोऽस्य लब्धा आश्चर्यज्ञाता कुशलानुशिष्टः. So we have seen this so far about how it is not easy for this knowledge to be available. Shravanyapi bahubhirna labhyo. Many people don't find a chance or an opportunity to listen to this kind of knowledge. Shravanyapi bahubhirna labhyo. And then Shrinvantu api, those who have listened from among them also, bahavo yamna vidyu. A lot of them still do not understand it because they do not have what we call in Sanskrit the patrata, the capacity or the uh, ability, you can say, to understand this knowledge. So such people, it is said, are rare. Ascharya. So Ascharya is you see something as a surprise. Surprise is not just because something, something that is weird about it. Because a lot of people imagine Ascharya Vakta means some person who is different to look to, because a lot of people have an expectation that the knowledgeable person will have a big beard, dadi, and he will wear a certain kinds of clothes, and he will walk in a certain manner, talk in a certain manner. So that is not necessary. Ascharya Vakta means basically someone who is rare. So that rare person is not easily available or easily found. Ascharya Vakta Kushalasya Labdha. It is difficult to understand or to find someone who has this kind of knowledge or who is able to express it. Ascharya Vakta. Vakta means someone who has the ability to say it. Because some people might know the knowledge, but they cannot teach it to others. Right? They have understood it and they have also uh, what we call imbibed the knowledge. So we saw the word that used here, that for knowledge, if we divide it simply into three parts here. So if knowledge is in the form of any kind of vritti or thought that is given to us, so that knowledge, when it is properly generated, that thought is generated as knowledge, we call it as we call the knowledge as pragya, right? Pragya. So pragya is not just in the normal modern sense. It is not just knowing something, right? So a lot of times you'll read, or a lot of teachers will also say, just knowing is enough. Just knowing, ब्रह्म को जानकर स्वयं ब्रह्म हो जाता है. By knowing Brahman, he becomes Brahman. So that knowing is not just plain information, right? So in pragya, we have three portions. We have, first is the satya, the knowledge or the gyan, the knowledge part, which is you can say expressed in words, or that can be explained somehow by the shastram or the guru who has read the shastram. And then second part is the smriti. Smriti is where memory of that should be there. It's not that today I remember and the moment I go away from the class, or moment I close my book, or moment I stop hearing to the person, so I then I cannot recall. Like I gave you the example of Karna in Mahabharata. He didn't remember his knowledge at the right time. So for him, it was not useful at all. It was useless. So in this way, the person with good smriti only can use this knowledge in a more reliable or more better way. So, and then finally we saw this fact about the Ascharya, the person who is knowing it through this, what we call Smriti, he has to have the further third part of Pragya, which is called Dhriti. Dhriti is Dharanat iti Dhriti. To be able to hold something, to be able to grasp it, to be able to keep it within oneself, right? To be able to have a very clear understanding and clear expression of that knowledge. You should be able to mold it into your behavior. You should be able to make your behavior move in accordance with that, right? So just funnily, as seeing my dog today or earlier also, what does he do? He, whenever I give him food and he doesn't want to eat, he wants to eat later. So there is a solid floor here. That's a solid floor. And what he will do is, there is no mud here, but he will go near the food and he'll use his nose and he will try to cover the food with mud, like he's hiding it. So it is something ingrained within him, ingrained within over so many maybe earlier births. So that is the same way within us. The knowledge should be so deeply ingrained that it should become part of our nature. That is what nature is about, right? So that is how deep the knowledge must be before we can truly say that we have imbibed or understood or known this knowledge. Knowing means all three. What are all three? The Satya or Gyan, and then Smriti and Dhriti. So all these three are used in this way. So a lot of people who know this knowledge, they are the ones who have totally imbibed this knowledge. And those who have imbibed this knowledge, they are ones who whose behavior or whose outer expression really seems different from the common people, right? So now, what we have seen so far, what I like, we have seen last two more verses here recently. So in those two verses, what have we seen here is that this knowledge is being talked about, and then before that we were talking about the person who has imbibed this knowledge, but there are certain other persons who do not have this knowledge, right? So we have to stay focused finally on what the question is, right? What is the question? What is the original question to which the answer is being given? The question is that what happens after death? Is there a soul or not, right? So that is the main question. So if you look back into the sixth verse, there he has answered, Yamaraj has answered that some people are there who for whom there is nothing after death. So for such people, they They whenever they die, they think it's over, but it's not that way. They come again and again into my grip. They are, come again and under my grasp. What does that mean? That means that there is a transmigration of the soul. Clearly, he's answered first part of the question. That is definitely there is a movement of the soul from this janma to the other janma. First, he will go to maybe another loka or another world. That is his mrityu lok, where he will hold it and he will the soul will suffer or enjoy whatever good karma and bad karma it did. Right. So in heaven or hell or whatever we call swarga or narak. So in this way, the first part has been answered. Secondly, the what is the second part? That also that for the person who the first was the person with what we call prayas, who will do only things that he likes. So for that person, there will be transmigration. And what about the second person, the one with Shreyas? The one with Shreyas will be one for whom this knowledge will take him to a higher state of experience. And we'll see this more in the next verses also. So already he has answered in short the question. Now, only thing that remains is the expansion of this knowledge, right? So this is one important thing about this. And I quoted here also the portion about from the Gita. So in Gita also, second chapter 9, Ascharyavat Paschati Kaschidenam. So that also was expressing the same thought. So that shows the close association of all our scriptures, right? So in Gita, you will find lots of shlokas. Here we call it mantra because it's Upanishad, and in the Smriti because it's from part of Mahabharata. So in Gita, there that is what we call a shloka. So shlok में बहुत सारे मंत्र भी आते हैं. Lot of mantras are also taken, sometimes as it is, sometimes with some variation. We'll see more of them later on also in the very same text. More will be coming up. Right. So in this way, all there is a close association of all the knowledge. So that is why all the texts are equally capable of giving this knowledge. It's not that we can get Atmagyanam only from Upanishad. We can get from Gita, Mahabharata, or any of the Puranams, right? If we have the proper teacher or understanding. So here, teacher thing is again mentioned here, Ascharya, Vakta. So once someone has to be there. So this will also come in the next one. So there has to be someone who will teach, kushal anushishta, someone who will teach the persons who want to learn. So there has to be someone who will be able to teach them. So let's move on to the next one. So नानरेणावरेण प्रोक्त एषः सुविज्ञेयो बहुधा चिन्त्यमानः अनन्य प्रोक्ते गतिरत्र नास्ति अनीयान् हि तर्क्यमनुप्रमाणात् न नरेणवरेणो प्रोक्त एष सुविज्ञेय बहुधा चिन्त्यमानः अनन्य प्रोक्ते गति अत्र नास्ति अनीयान् हि अतर्क्यम् अनुप्रमाणात्. So, na naren avaren prokta esha. This knowledge is cannot be given by a person with lesser knowledge. Our is lower. Huh? So, or you can use upper. So, our Guruji used to say upper is lower. In English, what you call upper, in Sanskrit is lower. That is how you remember. So, our or upper is lower, and the higher one is para. So para is higher, para log, higher, low. So our is lower. So person with lower knowledge, or what we call alpagya, or one with lesser knowledge, as it's translated here, a person with lesser knowledge, na naren avaren prokta esha. Prokta is to be expressed, to be said, to be taught. Esha, this knowledge. So by a person of lower intellect, whenever he tries to express this knowledge, so this na you have to bring down to suvigya. The na means no. So here, na naren avaren prokta esha suvigyo bahuda chintamana. So for that person, when such a person tries to give this knowledge, it is na suvigya. It is difficult, or it is not easy to comprehend, or it is not comprehended at all. Bahuda Chintemana. Even after lot of listening or lot of thinking or lot of meditating, still that knowledge is does not get fixed because the person who's expressing it is not competent enough. Right? Ananya prokte gatir atra nasti. So it how can it be done? It can be done. It can be understood or grasped. It is by someone who is very well versed in this knowledge. So there are two ways at looking at Ananya. Ananya, one meaning is someone different from you. Ananya. Huh? So Anya, someone different from you. So someone different from you is needed for you to take this knowledge. So in that case only, this knowledge will become graspable to you. So in Shankara Bhashya, this word also has been used in four different ways. I'll explain that later on. So Ananya Prokte. So other way of looking is first is that this knowledge has to be imparted by someone different from yourself. That is, you have to go to a teacher basically. Otherwise, you will not get an understanding. Gatiratra nasti. Uh, and then, other word is ananya means totally non-different. Ananya. So when I'm same as something else. So if I take a glass of water and a glass and water in the ocean. So if I mix it, can I separate it? No, because it is ananya. It is non-different, non-separate. You cannot separate it from that, right? So same way with any other thing. If two things have the same basic substance, the substance is same, then there is no difference. So Ananya is what? Person who realizes his own true nature as that of consciousness or Brahman or Satya or we can say the Satya Satchit Anand Swarupa. So if one realizes your own nature as that of the same of the highest reality, then that person is said to be Ananya also, right? So that is the person who is Ananya. Even Ananya Bhakti is used in that sense. Ananya Bhakti is when one worships the Lord as not different from oneself, like Swami Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to do. He used to, even drop flowers on himself. He used to offer the flowers on his whole body because for him, Ma and him were non-different. Ananya Bhakti was there. So, Ananya Prokte Gatiratra Nasti. So until and unless this is heard from someone who is of the nature who has understood his nature as being non separate from atma or non separate from the highest reality, then that person can actually teach you. Huh? And then you can take it another way of the gati part, gati ratra nasti. So if he is teaching that, then there is no different gati, meaning transmigration is denied. You won't have a second birth, right? Second birth will not be there. So and aniyan he atarkyam anupramana. So this will spend some time more also. So aniyan, this knowledge is very subtle, very subtle, not easy to grasp. And then he atarkyam. It is uh, not to be argued over. It is not to be, it is ungraspable by arguments, very subtle. And then anupramana. It is very subtle, very difficult to grasp is the aniyan, and here it is subtle. So similar meaning. How? Because it has to be only gained by Shastra Pramana. Only Shastra can give you this knowledge. So Aniyan hi atarkya anupramana. So here this knowledge, when we are talking about, we have to search for the proper person. The proper person alone can give this knowledge. So if we can find the one who has this knowledge, it will illumine, it will get clear to us very fast. Otherwise, it will not be suvigya. So just like to point out a small thing about the beauty of Sanskrit here. So na is here and you can add it to the suvigya, but na is one word that can be expressed as naha, hum, we. We. So you can use na as no and also as we. How you can use in both sense in this sentence itself. So in this in sentence, na is na sivigya. This knowledge is difficult. to be comprehended. And again, you can say we will find this knowledge not uh, easily understandable if it is being taught by someone who is less proficient, right? So this knowledge has to become very, very deeply ingrained in our psyche. Then only we can truly benefit from it, truly gain it. And Ananya Prokte, so again, uh, we go to this part about Aniyan. So in our Vedantic system, there are certain rules that are to be understood. The first rule, rule number one, if you can write it down, is of always the cause, that is Karan, is always more subtle than the effect. So cause is always more subtler than the effect. So also it is more graspable by the whatever is subtle will be graspable by less sense organs. Whatever is what we call gross is graspable by more sense organs. I'll explain this. So first we understand the word subtle, aniyan, subtle. Subtle is what usually when we think about subtle, we think of something small, something that we cannot see, right? But in our logics or system of Nyaya or even in all other Vedantic systems, the word subtle has more deeper connotation. It has a more deeper meaning. How? Subtle means something that is not visible, but it has more area of presence. So the way the thing that becomes more subtler means that it becomes more less visible and more area per way. Just like we see in the five elements. In the five elements, solid, Prithvi Tattva is it is easily available for perception. It will take up lesser area. Now you take that same amount of solid, the same amount of solid when you heat it up and it becomes a liquid, it will spread out more. It will cover more. So it has become subtler. It has become more subtle. So again, you have to remember one more rule that I said about being less grasped by less organs, less sense organs. So solid we say is grasped by all five sense organs, right? पांचों इंद्रियों से ग्राह्य है, or it is graspable by all five sense organs. Then we convert it into liquid. Liquid is grasped by four sense organs, right? Four sense organs. So gandha disappears. Of course, in Prithvi Tattva there will be certain gandha, but that will slowly decrease. So then finally, when it will become it, we will make it more subtle. Agni. So Agni by Agni Tattva means we take it to the energy state, right? Energy state, and then finally Vayu. Vayu is more subtle. So Vayu also that same element will take up lot of value, lot of space. Sorry, lot of space, and then finally Akash. That same thing can be, according to our system, technically be converted into space also, right? So then that becomes more subtle. So Akash is graspable by only one sense organ. आकाश को हम सिर्फ श्रवण इंद्रिय से जान सकते हैं, only by the sense of hearing, because sound travels to that. The property of the guna of akash, or the property of akash is shabda. So shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, these are the five properties. How does Gandha disappear in liquid form? The reason behind is that for liquid form, we are here not talking about just that element be converted, because here solid is actually attained. But when we talk about the five elements in their name, then Prithvi we say Prithvi Tat has Gandha. But the next is Jal. So Jal technically we say does not have a smell. Whatever smell we attribute to it is due to some solid impurity still there available, right? So in effect, what we mean is that when we are converting to liquid, then only the liquid part and not the solid that is there in that mix in that sense in the liquid in form of dispersed form, that is giving the smell. But if it could be converted to pure water, which is not, of course, possible that any element can be converted to pure water. So that is what it could be giving to, right? So Shabd, Sparsha, Rupa, Ras, Gandh means the five properties. So Prithvi has all five. Jal doesn't have gandha. Then we go to Agni. It does not have uh, shabd. And then sorry, gandha and rasa is not there, so it has shabd sparsh roop. Shabd sparsh roop. Then finally number fourth we go to vayu will have only shabd and sparsh, and then Akash will have Shabd only. So that is how we have five elements. The first one will have one property, and the last one will have all five. So everything that becomes subtle. So whenever we are talking about something at the limit of subtlety, which is infinitely subtle, then we say it is infinitely present also. If something can be made infinitely small, that is zero size, then its presence is infinite. दैट इज द एक्चुअल कॉनोटेशन और मीनिंग ऑफ सटल. सूक्ष्म का अर्थ ये है कि वो सबसे सूक्ष्म. व्हाट इज द मोस्ट सटल मोस्ट? दैट इज द highest reality, Brahman. Brahman is what? He is also existing at a point and also existing everywhere, right? So zero and infinity, some people they say are the same, no? So something on those similar lines. So whenever we can reduce an object to zero size, like in physics also, no? If we keep on decreasing the size according to the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, then the if we can technically or theoretically also reduce the mass to zero, then the momentum or the location of that object will be infinite. So it's a simple calculation in that when you do that calculation of multiply mass by the location, so that is there, or momentum by the location. So that is why an electron is said to have a area of presence, right? So we find it funny that one electron can mean such a huge area at the same time, even though it's so small. But in our system, that logic is clear that the more smaller it becomes, the more area it will cover. So one of our teachers gives this example regularly. If you burn a chili, then it will be spreading to the whole room, and then everyone can experience it. So it has become sukshma. It has become more perceptible to the people. So sukshma here we have understood. I hope it is clear. So aniyan. So this subtlety of the highest reality is to be understood as something that pervades more area, or of the highest reality, it is infinite. So that is why this knowledge is about what? The knowledge about Atma, right? Our knowledge is about the soul. And that soul is said to be the most subtle. And that is why he atarkyam. How can you point out by logic that is infinite? That is the thing. So that is why this knowledge is atarkyam. It is explained by Shastram. Shastram has it. So it's not that you can totally rule out logic. Okay. But you cannot reach it purely by logic. That is what is being said. You cannot reveal it, or you cannot express it purely by logic. So Shastra will say something. It is something that is not the subject of your experience. आपको नहीं उसका अनुभव हो सकता. It is impossible because it is actually the experiencer. So experiencer cannot know itself. So there we use the second rule of Vedanta, Swatmani Kriya Abhavat. Swatmani Kriya Abhavat. So this finger cannot, the tip of this finger cannot touch the tip of this finger itself. Right? So the same object cannot be know itself. Just like the light of the torch cannot reveal its own bulb or its own battery. So that also shows that whatever is the source, whatever is subtle, like with these sense organs, we cannot see the sense organ itself. The sense organ is not this eye that you see. It is the subtle power behind the eye. वो शक्ति है उसके पीछे की. It's the subtle power. So that power you cannot see. You are using this power, but using this power you cannot see the eye itself. So that is Swatmani Kriya Abhavat. There cannot be action upon something. Something cannot act upon itself. Something cannot act upon itself. Right? Just like a robot cannot drive itself. It will need something from outside, some power. So this knowledge is atarkyam, meaning this knowledge is not graspable by logic itself. It cannot be arrived itself by logical, but that is it can be understood or expressed by knowledge. So there are a lot of times when someone who has heard this knowledge and some other person will give a logic that will seem to deny this knowledge. So you have to understand whatever Shastra is saying, it cannot be denied. It is not possible to deny it, right? So if someone can give a logic, maybe sometime in your life you will also find the proper logic by which you can cut that logic. So in case of Atma, we have to remember it is not just you, it's not something that you can describe as an object. It's not something that you can describe as an object. So because you are talking about the subject, the objective knowledge is not there. So you cannot cut it up into pieces. So what does Tarka does? What does logic does? It cuts up an argument into pieces and then takes up the one argument that is correct. For Atmagyanam, a lot of them can be correct. So it can be it exists, it does not exist, does exist and does not exist, and it does not exist. There are four ways of expressing that. All four arguments we will learn later how they apply to Atma. For Atma, you cannot classify it into a box that this is how it is be, how it has to be. So that is why this knowledge is said to be atarkyam. And anupramanat, we said, because it is so subtle, we cannot say like the Atma is like an atom or something more subtle than atom. So some people say in physics they are looking for a God particle. So God particle is not something that has to be a particle. If it is something that will be the ultimate source of everything, then it cannot be something smaller than the most smallest particle that we have discovered so far. No, because for them, what is the logic? The logic is the God particle is the ultimate source of everything. Just like we found that every element is made up of electrons and protons. And when we go further, we have seen, according to the more recent discoveries, all the other subatomic particles like quarks, pi, mesons, musons, muons, so on, such a huge list. So we are all looking at finding something that will be smaller than them also, and all the others will be composed of that God particle only. So we already have a God particle, that is Brahman. Our God particle is something from which everything arises and from which everything merges back into also. So this Atma is Atarkyam Anupramanat. And so someone who is trying to cut it by logic does not mean that here this knowledge will be negated. It cannot be negated by knowledge, right? So we'll just go further into this. So this same point is re-emphasized. Nesha tarken matirapneya प्रोक्तान्येनैव सुज्ञानाय प्रेष्टः यां त्वम् आप सत्यधृति भृतासि क्वादिक् न भूयात् नचिकेत पृष्टा नैषा तर्केन्मतिरापनेया प्रोक्तान्येनैव सुज्ञानाय प्रेष्टः यां त्वम् आप सत्यधृतिर्बतासि त्वादृङ् न भूयात् नचिकेत पृष्टा. So this knowledge again is being expressed that it is not to be argued or debated. Na esha tarkena mati apneya. This knowledge cannot be established by the logic alone, or intellect or logic alone. Prokta anyen eva sugyanaya preshta. So this has to be taught by someone anyen eva, someone different from you, or again the same meaning, someone established in non-duality, someone who knows about his ananya nature, about his non-different nature from that highest reality. Sugyana is Shrestha, someone who has this pure knowledge. So Yam Tvam Apa Satya Dhritir Batasi. So you are now the holder of this knowledge, the king of this knowledge, the king of this intellect. By you have how have you attained it? By being established in Satya Dhriti Batasi, in truth and forbearance. So again, here again, two parts of Satya and Dhriti are given of the Pragya. The other one is Smriti. So that is given in some other text. So this knowledge is established in you already. How? Because he has shown that he did not get enticed by the things that were offered to him. So this na esh tarken matirapneya, basically we saw in the previous one also that this knowledge cannot be denied or established by logic or intellect alone, right? Because again, I said this knowledge is about the subject and not about the object. So this is not objective knowledge. What is the difference between subjective and objective? Objective knowledge needs the what we call triputi. There has to be a knower, the person who is knowing, and then there is a known, the object that is being known, and then there is the instrument of knowledge. There is the medium through which that knowledge is known. So if I'm knowing a book, then the book is being known by my consciousness or by my mind. So that knowledge is being done. And what is, I have to use my consciousness, because without consciousness it cannot be known. And then the instrument. So the instrument is what? The first instrument is the eye, which is observing it. And the second instrument is the mind, which is taking that knowledge and analyzing it. And you can say synchronizing it, right? Because the mind will be taking the information from all the five sense organs, and then finally it will be able to form a composite picture of that object, right? So this composite picture is the total knowledge about the object, and there the knower has to be there. The consciousness, my consciousness has to be there. If I am not conscious, then the object, even if a mind is there, it will not be able to know, right? As long as consciousness is there, then only can the object be known. But in the case of Atma or in the case of the self, there is no medium to be needed. It is mediumless knowledge. It is mediumless knowledge. I do not need anyone to tell me that I exist, or I do not need anyone to tell me that I know, right? So I know my existence without anyone telling me, right? So that is the difference between subjective knowledge. So same thing with Atma. Atma is what? Atma is me only. Only thing is what my mistake is, I am thinking of this Atma as the body, mind, intellect, right? BMI we call it. So this body, mind, intellect is the source or the medium through which this knowledge, this Atma is functioning. These are merely instruments, but I am not these instruments, right? So once I know that, then I will clearly understand that knowing the subject does not need anything. And in fact, this is the same essence of Atmagyanam also. Uh, Only thing is, my Atmagyanam is replaced by Sharir Jnana, by the knowledge of the body. That is why I get confused. That is why I form all the kinds of mistakes that happen with what we call the ego, with the ahamkara. So ahankara, what does what? Ahankara displaces my vision. Intellect is part of the mind itself. Yes. Look, there is a way of looking at it. Intellect, there is what we call the antakaran. Antakaran. We saw this in Tattva. So in antakaran is called what we call the inner instrument. So in one definition, antakaran is divided into four parts. So that is man, buddhi, chit, ahankar. So man is the mind, the knowing faculty. Then buddhi is the intellect, right? And then chitta is the memory part, the hard disk, where storage is done. And then ahankar is the ego sense, where there is a displacement of the doer. Who is the doer? The doer is the Atma. Without the consciousness, nothing can be done. But because this Atma is functioning through this body or this mind, I tend to think of this body or mind as the doer, right? Maine kiya. So when I'm talking about that, I am happy, I am sad. Whom am I talking about? I'm talking about the mind, right? So it's the mind that is happy or sad, right? Or I know something, I learned something. Who's talking? The intellect is talking. Yeah. Then I remembered something. We went there last week. What is being talked about? The memory. But I am saying, what is the word I'm using? I. So it is ahankar or ego is the misplaced sense of the location or the center of the knowledge, right? The knower. The knower gets displaced by the instrument. right? So there are basically two kinds of this displacement in knowledge. One is the knower gets displaced, and the by the by the instrument that is being used. And then the second one is this: in this knowledge, it is displaced by whatever action, karma, I am performing. How? Like today, I can say I am a doctor, I am an engineer, I am a scientist. So whatever activity I do, that activity I impose as the doer. मैं कर्ता को अपना कर्म बना देता हूँ, जो मैं कर्म कर रहा हूँ और या जो कर्म करने वाला है. Whoever is the doer of the action, or whatever action I am doing, that action I impose on myself. So I say I am a doctor, I am an engineer, right? So all that time I am not the doctor. I am the I am the Atma only. So what is the correct sentence? I am the Atma functioning as an engineer, or I am the Atma functioning as a doctor, right? So in this way, Matiya Apneya, this logic has to be established in the buddhi, in the mind. I have to apane, I have to separate the wrong knowledge. Huh? So this, but it cannot be done how? Not by tarkena. Na isha tarkena matirapne. I have to establish myself in this knowledge, but not by tarka. The by no, by intellect, I can establish the shastra knowledge, whatever has been shastra, because we learned earlier what is the process for this. What is the process? Shruti, Yukti, Anubhuti, right? So first thing, Shruti has to say something. Then only we will accept about the knowledge about something that is not grasped by the sense organs, right? Shruti will not talk about the nature of the world. That is known to you already. You can learn by logic, inference, experience, and so on, right? But Shruti will talk about what? The higher lokas, or he will talk about the Atma. That is the two main topics of Shruti. So Shruti is talking about these two topics. That means Shruti has the ability to express what is not normally known to us through our sense organs, right? So this, when this Shruti is telling you something, now we check whether yukti can be applied, whether logic can be applied. So first Shruti has to tell you something, then you can apply logic, and if it makes sense, yes, Shruti is saying something, that means it makes sense. And then finally, Anubhuti. It has to become my experience also. Just not that someone has established by logic. It has to become my experience also. That is the final and the highest stage of knowing of this knowledge. So, na esha tarkin matirapneya. This has to be established first through Shruti, then you can use logic. Prokta anyev sugyana preshta. So preshta, like we use the word in Hindi, shreshta, the highest or the best. Na? So preshta, priya is someone I like or someone I love. Preshta, the best, the most dear, the dearest. That is preshta. So he's talking to Nachiketa here only. So that he's saying, hey Nachiketa, or my dearest Nachiketas, this knowledge is not to be established by logic. You need to learn this from a guru. That is why Nachiketa himself said earlier, what? I am lucky that I have you as a teacher. So a teacher like you will not be available who has actual experience of what happens after death, because you are the Lord of death. You know what happens after death. So yam tvam apah satya dhriti batas. You already have this. You have satya dhriti. You have the ability to hold on to this knowledge. You have partially heard also this knowledge. You only just need the final expounding or the final explanation of this knowledge, and you will instantly gain this. That does not mean that someone who's not expert cannot take this knowledge. Okay, please remember that. Even if you have zero capability, then also you have to try to learn this knowledge. Twadri Ganya Bhuya Nachiketa Prashta. He's saying there is no other like you, Nachiketa. That does not mean that there never was and there never will be. It is just a form of praise. Someone you किसी को बहुत अच्छा लगता है, you like someone, then you instantly said there is no one like you. There is no one dearer to me, right? So that is a subjective way of saying something. You are expressing a special emotion, a special emotion. So that is why he's saying Twadrik Anyo Bhuyat. There has never been anyone like you, or there never will be anyone like you. No, but he basically what he's saying is, I need someone who is able to question me like you. Prashtha. the one who can ask me a question about this knowledge, someone who wants to know this knowledge. So I want students who have your willingness or eagerness to know this knowledge, right? That is who does the teacher like? The person, the kid who puts his hand up in the class first. So that is how that child also becomes, dearer to the teacher. Someone who's eager and he will like to teach. Someone who's acting, sitting in the back, not enjoying. So for that person, the teacher will not be able to do much also, no? It is said that a lot of people, no, they will go to this pravachan and all. So some of them, they just go because they want to escape from the household, maybe escape some duties or escape some kind of interaction or whatever. So they'll just go there and they'll just listen, but they are not absorbing anything. They are not accepting that knowledge. And there is the further one who go there to listen, but then their mind is still on the sansaric vishaya, on the object of the world. So going there, they are remembering about their work or remembering about their duties or something that they forgot to do at home. So they also will not be able to do it. And then there is another category of people who go there, but they get bored very quickly. So after some time, because they don't have the depth of understanding, right? But that does not mean that one should not try, even if one is not expert. uh, this is something, that capacity that builds up within you. It builds up within you slowly over a period of time. And once you have established yourself in truth or forbearance, satya dhriti batasi, once you have established this thing in you, then it becomes easier. It does not mean that it is unavailable. This knowledge is unavailable for a common person. It is available for each and every person. But the one who becomes dearer to the teacher, Preshtaha, and who questions sincerely, Prashtha, that person becomes a more, what we call, deserving of this knowledge. Huh? He is a adhikari. So for that adhikari, it becomes easier. But as we saw in the adhikari part also, for being an adhikari, you need so many qualities. So none of us have all these qualities, right? But that does not mean that we stop even making the effort. So this effort has to be made. We will gain these qualities over a period of time. Maybe over a few days, few years, or few even janmas, or even so many births of listening. It will finally click in our mind. Hmm. So this knowledge has to be constantly strived for. We have to constantly strive for. Then only we can finally attain clarity in that. So twadrik anya bhuyat nachiketa prashta. I hope that I will keep getting students like you, is his intent of saying. So yeah. Now this knowledge being established for the student, uh, yeah, Nachiketa is here hearing it. So this knowledge, when expressed in the proper manner, will help the student grasp it. Now here we saw this earlier part about mm, the eighth verse. So where we saw that na naren avaren prokta esha. So there also we saw first the teacher has to be capable of expressing this knowledge. Here we are seeing the student should be able to grasp this knowledge, right? So this way, both this combination has to help. Unqualified teacher cannot succeed, however learned or brilliant he may be, and he must be one established in non-duality, but the teaching has to be understood clearly. So first thing we saw, teacher has to be ananya. He has to be one with the self. He has to be non-different about his knowledge about the self. Then secondly, what happens is the teaching. What is the teaching about? The teaching is about my own self. My own self. So own self, I have to understand as my nature being non-different from the highest reality. So once that happens, what will happen next stage? Next stage is there will be gati atra nasti. There will be no transmigration. The cycle of births and deaths will, continue it will stop. There will be no continuation of the cycle of birth and death. And then finally, this truth being beyond argumentation. This truth has to be It's not an intellectual game, and it's not a football game. You're passing from one side to the other. It will be something that can be established by Shruti, and you accept it, and then you use your logic, and the logic, the proper teacher will give you the proper logic also. So now this gati that we have seen, this knowledge that we have seen is established in that student. So what does he do? How does he deal with it now? So now here Yamaraja is talking about his own experience of this knowledge, or how he has attained it, or what is the path. So 10th mantra 1 to 10. जनाम्यहं शेवधीरित्य नित्यं न हि ध्रुवे प्राप्यते हि ध्रुवं तत् ततो मया नचिकेतश्चतोऽग्नि अनित्यद्रव्ये प्राप्तवानस्मि नित्यं जनाम्यहं शेवधीरित्य नित्यं न हि ध्रुवे प्राप्यते हि ध्रुवं तत् ततो मया नचिकेतश्चितोऽग्निः अनित्य द्रव्ये प्राप्तवान अस्मि नित्यम. So he says, janami aham chevadhi iti anityam. I know that this treasure, or this worldly treasures are anitya. Janami ham. I know that the objects of the world are anitya. So, but we are saying objects, we can use karma, we can use different words also. Just understand this word properly. So, Shevadhi. So, Shevadhi is a word that has multiple meanings. Basically, it means what we call Nidhi. Nidhi means what? A place where we store something, a storehouse, go down, right? So, that is what is meant by Nidhi. So, Nidhi is where we store something. So, here we can say Karma Nidhi or Shevadi. Karma Nidhi is it can be used as Karma Nidhi, or the karmas that we store over multiple janmas. So that is Shevadi in a sense. So he knows that this multiple karmas that we do over our lifetime, they are all ephemeral, temporary, or not permanent, and so on. Huh? Then another word for Sheva, if you look at the Nirukta, so in Nirukta, Sheva means also joy, Sukha. Why? Because whatever objects or whatever activities or karma we do, we do them to gain Sukham. We do them to gain joy. So that is why this word, even though it can be used for karma ashay, or a collection of our karmas, it also means Sukham, Sheva. So Shevadhi means the sum total of our pleasures. That also can be remembered. And also one more sense is shev also means shishyate iti shevaha. It also means something that remains, something that remains. So whatever remains, that only we store, na? Whatever remains, that we store in a storehouse or go down. So after that we have uh, used the let us say, if we have doing some agricultural produce, annam. So that annam will take up from the field, will consume what we use during the year, and the rest will store in the granary, right? So in this way, he says, what is the rule here for all these things? Nahi dhruvai prapyate hi dhruvam tat. So na hi adhruvai prapyate hi dhruvam tat. So that dhruvam, that infinite, that unchanging, cannot be attained by something that is adhruva, something that is changing. So changing things cannot help us attain that dhruva, or that highest reality. So dhruva is what, you have heard about dhruva. What is your knowledge about dhruv? What does dhruv mean? There is one dhruv tara, star. Right? So why we call it dhruv tara, that star? Because its position in the sky remains unchanged, right? So it is centrally located. So that is why we call it dhruv tara. It is also the name of a child who did tapasya. So what was his nature? He was sure about what he wanted. So that is why he was fixed कि मुझे यही चाहिए. Just like Nachiketa also here. I want this knowledge only. So dhruva means unchanging, non-changing, na? Something that will not. So that also represents Atma. Atma is non-changing. Atma cannot have change. It does not, you know, split into pieces or it does not split into parts, right? So that is why that dhruv, how can we attain that? Can be attained by sansaric objects, or basically we are talking about karma here. So by karma or action, we cannot attain that thing. Then again, still, how has he attained? Tato maya nachiketas to agni, nachiketas chito agni. That chit agni, that nachiket agni that I told you about. I attained those things, that eternal things, by this. So in some translations, it will be said that what is being talked about here is the temporary swarga, swarga that is attained by this Nachiketa Agni. But that is not the exact sense. That can be taken in one way. We cannot deny that. So because some wise man has written that. But if you understand it this way, Tato Maya Nachiketa Chita Agni, by taking the path of penance or purification, what have I done? I have made my mind go towards Shreyas. So by Shreyas, I am taking my mind to a higher state. When I take it to that higher state, I can grasp that through. That if I'm involved in the worldly affairs, enjoying the worldly pleasures, then these worldly pleasures or these karmas and their karma phalam, these actions, that whatever I do and the fruits of those actions, karma and karma phalam, they cannot take me towards that highest reality. But if I give up, so there, what is the secret of this Nachiketa Agni? It has to be what we call Nishkam karma. Nishkam karma. I don't have to do karma with the desire of a fruit. I just do it for the betterment of the universe as a whole. Hmm. So that is why when we talk about the Pancha Mahayagya, the five daily duties, they are duties with no expectation. With no expectation. So when we do this, we'll go into this in Purush Sukta also. It's very beautiful part there. We'll look into it tomorrow. So this whatever karmas that we do, they normally take us to a fruit, certain fruit that we expect. But when we do it without expectation of fruit, then what does it do? It does chitta shuddhi. It purifies my mind. Chitta shuddhi hoti. So once chitta shuddhi is there, then what happens? I become adhikari, right? I become all those qualities that we talked about: mokshutvam, vivek, vairagyam, and the Shat Sampatti, which is in which we saw how the Shama, Dama, Uprati, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhana. So all those six qualities, how do they attain? By Chitta Shuddhi only. So that is how Yamaraja himself has gone that way. Anitya dravya praptavanasi nityam. Anitya, by these anitya objects, by this anitya mind, this mind, it can become a liability when I turn it towards my pleasures. But the moment I turn it inwards, moment I guide it with my intellect, जब मैं बुद्धि से उसको चलाता हूँ मन को, when I control it with my intellect, then my mind turns inward. And then this anitya dravya itself becomes the source for what? Praptavan asmi nityam. I am able to attain that highest knowledge, that nitya gyan, or that nitya knowledge, or that eternal knowledge of Atma. Of course, the other translation also holds, if you can say, by this anitya drivya, I can attain swargam. I can attain the temporary lok of pleasure where the body is not there, right? Where the body is not there. How many sessions? We'll talk this later. So, so now I know the path of karma is finite, he said. So unchanging, infinite. So here, or the whatever the different uh, paths we use, the path of action will take us only to sense gratification, but the path of Nachiketo Chitagni, the path of purifying the mind, can take us towards a proper grasping of that highest knowledge. And that knowledge then becomes available for me. So this is how I can take it into my in my path. I can use that Nachiketa Agni for, because in Havan also, no, because Nachiketa Agni is what? It is about the proper way to do a yajna, a Havan. So in a Havan, what we do, there is what we call a Kamna Yagya, a Yagya with the certain desire. We make a Sankalpa. We make a mental decision that this is what I want. And then accordingly, there is a way of doing that Havan. There are different dravyams or different objects that we have to use for that. And using that, if it is done in perfection, then it is definite that the object of our desire will be obtained. Hmm. But there is another yajna or homa which we can do daily also, the Agnihotra, or we can simply do an internal homa without even lighting a fire. You can do the inner yajna where no dravyam is needed. So whenever you are doing a inner homa or inner yajna, then you are offering what? You are offering yourself, your Atma to Brahman. So yourself to yourself in a way. So there what happened? There only Chitta Shuddhi is there. There only purity can be the result. You are not asking for something. So not naturally the Lord gives you what? The purity to reach him. He opens the door for you. So Janami Ham Shevadi Nityam, he knows that all these are not permanent. Uh, but by using this different process of Nachiketa Agni, the Lord Yamaraja has been able to attain that knowledge which he is now conveying to Nachiketas. So so now here the fire is being expressed as another way of going towards that highest knowledge. So time is up for today. We'll wind up. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Om Tat Sat